Welcome to Figure Feedback. My name is Jeremy, and today I'm going to be talking about this resin that I got in front of me. This is from Ameralabs, and this is their TGM-7 resin. It is a resin that they designed particularly for miniatures. It's supposed to make them tougher, it's supposed to make them more impact resistant, it's supposed to make certain smaller parts more flexible, basically so that you don't break them if they drop, or if you game with them a lot, they'll be able to withstand all of the handling that they're going to be put through. Now, I do want to thank Ameralabs for giving me a coupon so that I could buy this on their store at no charge, because otherwise I wouldn't have bought it myself. This is some expensive resin. On their website, you can buy this resin in gray as well as some other colors for like 74 euros, which comes out to like $78, something like that. Or you can buy it on Amazon, but the price is even more expensive. Right now, I've seen it going for about $89. It is by far the most expensive resin that I have ever used, but still going to give it a fair shot and going to talk about it. And right here in front of me, I have a host of models that I have printed across two different printers. I'm going to start with what I did on the Hagear's Ultracraft Reflex RS, which at this point you might already know, or maybe you don't know, that that particular printer only officially supports the resins that Hagear itself makes, but you can use a whole host of third-party resins in it, and most of the time it works out just fine. So I wanted to see if it will work out fine with this TGM-7 resin. So I started out with this model here. And as you can see, for the most part, it's not assembled. And the reason why it's not assembled is because, well, I don't like how it turned out. What I did was I used the PARP 10 setting on the Hagear's Ultracraft Reflex RS. That is usually a good option to work with pretty much any other third-party resin, but when used with this TGM-7 resin, the result was overexposure. The supports were very difficult to get off, and then the little sockets where you would put in to like connect different legs and you can connect this part to the body, those were not perfectly formed, so everything doesn't go together as smoothly as it should. And also, as a result of it being overexposed and the supports being more difficult to remove, it also will leave behind some marks on the figures as well. And the details on them, while not very bad when you're looking at them up close, it's still just a little bit blown out because it is overexposed. So I wasn't able, unfortunately, to really confidently put together this figure here, which would have had this barbarian on top of this dragon. This is the dragon's body. He also had some wings. And if you look on the inside of these wings, you can see some of that support material that's just really firmly embedded into the model because, like I said, it was overexposed. And I can just kind of pick these out, but it leaves behind, you know, some messiness and some scarring and things like that. So when I saw that, I was like, okay, that's not something that I am too happy with. I also printed this Wolfman miniature on the RS as well, using those same settings. And he came out better because, you know, the parts didn't have to go together or anything like that. But he did come out looking a little bit better, but in my eyes, still just a little bit overexposed. And for some reason, kind of shiny as well. I'm not sure why they're as shiny as they are, especially when you see what I did after this that resulted in things being not so shiny. But anyway, that was the Hagear's Ultracraft Reflex RS on the PARP 10 setting. But I went back and I tried it again. This time I used the PAP 10 setting on the RS, and the results were much better because the supports were a lot easier to remove. They weren't as stiff anymore. They didn't make me feel like I was going to pierce through my gloves trying to get them off. They were a lot easier to deal with. And I printed out a couple more models. So this first model here is like of this shaman, and he's got this cool staff right here. It has a lot of details and like this wolf pelt that he is wearing. And this model, it looks pretty decent, although it still has that weird shininess to it. I don't know why it has the shininess to it, but this model came out looking pretty good for the most part. But one thing that you will notice is that there is a layer shift on the dagger. The dagger was forming fine, and then it just sort of skewed to one side, which I sort of attributed to, you know, the RS doing something that's not proper. But as you'll see in a few minutes, that may not have been the case. But like I said, the supports came off much more easier. And you still might see some little support needles here and there on this model because, quite frankly, I just didn't feel like taking them off. So that's this right here. And then we have this guy. He still has those little support needles on him as well, because I wanted to be able to differentiate him from an identical figure that I printed later on. But here's the staff that he has, and as you can see, it's supposed to be pretty bendable, but as I tried to just bend that part there, it just snapped off. So it wasn't as flexible as I was hoping that it would be. But here's this other part. Let's try it out. And then it just also snapped. So I don't know, but as far as that bendability goes, it could be a lot bendier because I've tried resins that have been much bendier than that. So that is a disappointment to me, and you just saw it in real time. Here is the skeleton that is still on its supports, because when I was trying to take them off, even though the supports were easier to remove, he was not going to be taken off without his little thin bones being broken off as well. So I just left him like this so that you can see him. As far as little details go, he's a really small skeleton, and the details were captured pretty well. And the shield, you know, pretty basic, but still there. But, you know, the figure itself, he would have been broken, but I still wanted to show him to you. So that's why I left him on the supports. So as you can see, the results of this resin coming off of the Reflex RS, not the best. But I kept going. I wanted to try it out again on a printer that gave me more control over the different settings. So I went over to the Frozen Mighty Revo and I printed off some calibration files. And in the end, I decided to stick with a normal layer exposure time of about 2.3 to 2.5 seconds, something like that. That's what I used. And I printed some identical models and some different models. So first, let's check out this model, which is the identical one to the one that I just broke his staff on. And he came out looking really good. But as you can probably notice, he's not as shiny as the model that came off of the Reflex RS, and I don't know why. It's the exact same resin. It was cleaned in the exact same dirty IPA, moved over to the same clean IPA, it's cured the same way, but for some reason, this one came out with a more sort of matte finish with not so many shiny spots. I don't know why, that's just how it is, so I prefer this one. But now let's test out the bendiness of this particular staff. So let's bend this staff and see what happens. That end just broke off of that staff. Let's give this another little bend. All right, so as far as the bendability goes, this staff did not hold up. I was really hoping that it would because this is a nice looking model. He is now ruined, but it is what it is. The bendiness does not stand. All right, now let's move over to this shaman guy again. And just like the other shaman from the RS, he is not as shiny. This is the RS one that has all these shiny spots, and this one is the Mighty Revo, and it doesn't have those shiny spots. But also, it still has that layer shift on the dagger. It's not as extreme as it was on the RS, but it's still there, which I find to be very interesting because for this model, I used the pre-supported model for this on the Frozen printer, and then I used Hagear supports for this model, and in the same spot, it had a layer shift, only this one was more severe than this one, but still a layer shift nonetheless. So at least that tells me maybe it's not the printer that caused that to happen. But this guy looks really good, very good indeed. And this is his staff, which is not something that I think will have a whole lot of bendability to it. I'm bending it a little bit here. Still, it held up with a little bit of this bending here, and now it is broken. So I spoke too soon. So not as bendy as I wanted it to be. All right, let's move on to some other ones. I reprinted this Wolfman in a larger scale. He still looks pretty good. Really no complaints about him. Got the teeth still coming down, very easy to spot. And yeah, he looks good. The Wolfman turned out pretty good, but he is glued in a couple of pieces. I'm gonna do a drop test. Might not do a drop test on him because he's glued together. So if he comes apart, it could be a glue thing and not a resin thing. And here are some other models that I printed that I think came out looking so nice. I do like the finish of this resin, this matte finish. Got this guy with this cool gun here, almost like if Robin Hood had a gun. And then I have some other models here. And one that I like in particular is this. This came out in one piece. It's like an exoskeleton for like a mech or something, or like a construction droid, whatever. I'm not sure what the proper name was, but I really like how all of these little thin pieces, they still printed perfectly, wonderfully. And these are just pieces that I can see just coming off with the supports, or maybe being pulled off of the print bed from the FEP and just coming out deformed in some way. But this came out looking absolutely wonderful, came out looking perfect. So this is really cool. I'm glad that that was able to come out very, very well. And then I got this guy here who's sort of like on this mobile, I don't know, it's got wheels and it has treads on it. And this also came out looking pretty good. He came out in a couple of different parts. I know that the helmet is something that I glued on to him, but just like all these other figures that came off the Mighty Revo with this resin, they lack that shininess that the RS gave it. And it just has this nice matte finish. It looks really clean. And you can even read the police sign across his chest, and it is pretty clear. So yeah. This did a very good job as far as the details goes on these different figures. But now I think that I need to do some drop tests, some impact tests to see how that is going to work out. So let me just grab this guy here. I'll do them both. So this one is the one that came off of the Reflex RS, and we're just going to do a standard drop test. Ready? Here we go. Oh, here we go. Hey, he's still standing up. I don't know if you can see that. Here we go. All right, so he's, all right, let me drop him on the floor. He's still fine after being dropped on the floor. Let me do it again. And then that time, what broke off is the top part of the staff after hitting the floor. So that was the RS. Now this is the Mighty Revo. Ooh, he went underneath the cabinet there. But after all those drop tests, let me just do a quick comparison. So we lost the staff. Yeah, we lost the staff completely, and we also lost his arm through all of those different drop tests. So that's how it went with him. Let's go with this guy here with the staff. Here broke off a little piece of, he was carrying a dagger. The little dagger piece just broke off. Ooh, bouncy. So besides the dagger falling off, nothing else on him fell off. So that's how that works. And let's just do the Mighty Revo. And these will be the last drop tests. All right, I'm tired of chasing these guys down, but this part right here is still intact. The little scythe that he's holding, and every other part of him is still intact. He still has his hands, he still has his feet, still has his head. So yeah, I think that that's pretty tough. I think that's pretty resistant. I'm just letting them bounce. I'm just having fun now. And the little sickle broke off, but that was excessive, what I just did. So all in all, what do I think about this TGM-7 resin for miniatures? Well, here's the thing. It's very expensive. And because it's very expensive, I think that most people are going to be turned off by it. Spending $70, $80, $90 for 1 kilogram bottle of resin, that is a lot to ask. And when you look at the final result of this, even if you dialed it in just the way that you want it to, the models look very good. But in my experience with testing different tough resins, ABS-like resins, things like that, this has not performed better despite the price. I've tested other resins before with smaller thin parts that I've bend, and I bended them until they pretty much touched each other on the opposite sides, and they still didn't break. But with this one, I feel like I didn't get to bend it all that much before it broke. The impact testing is pretty good, obsessive in what I was doing. In most cases, people aren't going to be constantly dropping it from 5-6 feet in the air onto tables and onto concrete and doing it over and over and over again. You know, this stuff is not meant to be indestructible. I think that this tough resin is just meant to protect you from the most common unfortunate circumstances, and used reasonably in that matter, I think that it holds up fine, but probably not enough to justify the $70 to $80 that you'll be spending to have it. So it's not bad resin, but I do think that for the price, you'll most likely be better served going with something cheaper that's going to be just as strong and offer you better bendability. And I've reviewed resins like that here on this channel. All right, so that is it, you guys. If you are curious in this resin and you still want to try it out for yourselves, I'll still leave links in the description where you can check them out there. And that is going to do it for now. So I want to thank you all so much for watching. And until next time, take care of yourselves, and I'll speak to you soon.